Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Lockwood, Director of the National English Honour Society. I'm delighted to welcome you to this very special webinar with James Ijames, the Pulitzer Prize winning playwright and author of Fat Ham. Before we begin, just a quick note, the chat is open for your comments tonight and your reactions throughout the event, but James and Michael will only be answering the questions that were submitted during the registration process. A huge thank you to Isabel Kaufman, Naaman Kent, and Katie Mudd for all their hard work behind the scenes to make this evening possible. And now I'm thrilled to introduce tonight's interviewer, Michael Penner. Michael is a theatre teacher at the Arts Academy at Toms River High School North in Toms River, New Jersey. He has an MPhil and a PhD in education from Walden, an MA in theatre studies from Montclair State, and a BFA in musical theatre from Syracuse University. Michael has over 25 years of experience in the theatrical arts and has worked professionally on Broadway, on national tours, and at regional theatres. Michael is a proud member of the Actors Equity Association and the Screen Actors Guild. He is an advisory council member for the National English Honour Society, a board member of the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, and a state board member for the New Jersey International Thespian Society. Michael was the recipient of the 2025 Bergen PAC Theatre Award for Best Choreography for his production of Crazy for You, the 2022 New Jersey State Teen Arts Educator of the Year Award, the 2022 Paper Mill Playhouse Rising Star Award for Outstanding Educator, the 2022 Monmouth Arts Education Award, the 2022 International Thespian Society Inspirational Theatre Educator Award. 2022 was a good year. The 2019 Montclair State University Foxy Award for Excellence in Theatre Education, and the 2018 Basie Award for Best Lighting Design of a Drama. Michael, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for hosting this interview. Thank you for everything you do for NEHS. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Chris, and good evening to all of you out there, and thank you for joining us tonight as we have a conversation with the Pulitzer Prize winning and Tony Award nominated playwright, James Ijames. Before we start this interview, I just want to do a brief introduction about our playwright that is here this evening. So without further ado, this is all about James. I myself am thrilled to welcome James Ijames, a Pulitzer Prize winning and Tony Award nominated playwright, director, and educator whose work has transformed contemporary American theater. James's plays have been produced by an incredible range of companies, including the Wilma Theater, the Public Theater, Steppenwolf Theater, the National Black Theater, and Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival, among many others. His writing has also been developed through major institutions such as the PlayPenn, the Lark, and Playwrights Horizons. And over the course of his remarkable career, James has been recognized with numerous honors, including the F. Otto Haas Award for an Emerging Artist, multiple Barrymore Awards for Outstanding Direction, the Terrence McNally New Play Award, the Whiting Award, the Kessling Prize, and 2 Steinberg Prizes, and of course, the 2022 Pulitzer Prize for Drama for his groundbreaking play, Fat Ham, which also earned him a 2023 Tony nomination for Best Play. As a founding member of Orbiter 3, Philadelphia's first playwright producing collective, James continues to shape the future of theater not only through his artistry, but also as an associate professor at the theater at Villanova University and also currently at Columbia University. He holds a BA in drama from Morehouse College and an MFA in acting from Temple University. I am so honored to have the chance to speak with him today about his process, his inspirations, and his vision for the power of theater. So all of you out there, please join me in welcoming James Ijames. Hello, James.
Hi, thanks for having me. When you read it all like that, it's like, oh wow, that's a lot of stuff.
but it's truthful, right? It's very truthful, and yeah. I can't thank you enough for everything that you do for the theater community. And the lights went out, and I'm going to dance, and I'm going to stand up because the lights went out. It's not good. We're having so many problems. Yay! Anyway. Sorry about that. So first of all, before we start, I just wanted to kind of lay out how this is going to work. I have questions that were submitted from people from all over the world interested in knowing about your process, about Fat Ham in particular, and many other things that you worked on. And when I read each question, I'm going to read who they're from and where they're from, and then I will say the question for you. If it's a 2-parter or a 3-parter, I might break it up. We'll see how I'm feeling at the moment. And you are free to speak and tell us all about everything that you do that's so amazing. So you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So our first question is from Katie Stewart from West Virginia and Sophia Allen from Massachusetts. They ask, which authors and or works inspire you, and who would you recommend that they read?
Wow. I am deeply, deeply inspired by Zora Neale Hurston. I think of her as like a pretty direct artistic ancestor in many, many ways. Baldwin looms very large in terms of how he weaves the political in and out of what he is writing as a fiction writer. But as far as playwrights, I think I always say you should know A Raisin in the Sun because it's just a beautifully structured play, and I always tell my students it's a perfect play. Um, Lorraine Hansberry is incredible. Brandon Jacobs Jenkins is a person that I come back to over and over and over again, who's always challenging my assumptions about what a play can be. Jackie Sibley's Jury, um, Alice Birch. I love the Brits. They I enjoy they're sort of given a permission to break the form and keep messing with the form, which I think is really exciting. But really read everything, like anything you get your hands on. I mean, I read plays when I was first figuring out what a play was that made no sense for me to read them. But I remember reading Endgame very, very early, like way before I knew what I was doing, and being kind of blown away by it. So even if you feel like it's beyond you, reading things that feel beyond you is also a thing that I always encourage folks who are curious about writing to do.
Thank you for that. On to our next one. Rachel Schultz from Maryland. She asks, how did the idea for this retelling of Hamlet come to you?
Mm. Well, I was in a student directed production of it in college. I went to Morehouse College in Atlanta, and at Spelman is where I took most of my classes, and I was cast as Hamlet. I'm not Hamlet. I'm definitely Horatio in Hamlet if I were any character. But I thought the character was it was my introduction to Hamlet as a character, and I found him fascinated. I kind of weirdly identified. My parents were sort of splitting up when I was in grad school, in college and grad school. So like it, I was like, this, this is poking at stuff. And then I just kept reading it. It was a play that I enjoyed reading. I like the characters. I find it a very funny play. The more you read it, the more the humor of the play comes to the surface. And I'd known that I wanted to do an adaptation of a Shakespeare. I tried to do a Henry IV that went a little ways, but didn't quite work. And then I just started reading Hamlet and watching Hamlet, and it just sort of grew from there. But it really does come from doing it in college and being like, what a fascinating play.
And it is, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and it's certainly when students read it, like in high school, right? They're taken by everything that's in it, or they're confused. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, I think it's such an interesting play that he wrote because there's so many layers, right?
Yeah.
There's so many layers, and you're always finding something new. So
Yeah.
um, I think you couldn't have picked a better play to do a retelling of, right? I mean, Henry IV, oof, that was yeah. Uh, uh, okay, next question from Addison Sherry from Texas. She asks, what was one aspect of Shakespeare's Hamlet that you knew from the outset you wanted to preserve? And how did that decision either drive or impede your creative process?
What a wonderful question. The thing that immediately comes to mind is the speech right before charades, which is the speech that he sets up the players for the audience. I have heard that guilty creature sitting out a play. I knew I needed that to get to the charades bit. So that was a moment that I knew that I was going to bring from the original. You know, I love the ghost scene when he's talking to his father in the play, and so like that's why the ghost scene in Fat Ham is as long and sort of it takes up quite a bit of real estate. Both of them do. and so I think those were the two things that I knew. If you look at my work, a lot of my work is grappling with father-son relationships, and so that stuff always sort of like jumps out. But those were two things from the Shakespeare that I knew that pretty much from go were going to be in there. Other things sort of made sense as I was writing it.
Was there anything that you wanted to get rid of that you knew you wanted to get rid of?
To be or not to be.
Aha.
I
Yep.
just and many people have asked me why I didn't include it, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
as great a writer as I might think I am, I what am I gonna I either put that in the play or I it's so gorgeous. Like I can't I don't know.
Yeah.
I just couldn't touch it. It just felt too it was the piece of the text that felt the closest to like don't mess with this because it's just its own thing.
Yeah.
It's almost like the balcony scene in Romeo and Juliet. It's its own idea. And so I was like, no, I'm not interested.
And I could see why. I mean, as soon as
Yeah,
you just said that, I went, ah, yeah, you heard me. I probably went, ah, immediately when you said to be or not to be, of course.
yeah.
Fascinating. All right, next question. Jay Jurgen from Tennessee asks, what made you choose a Southern setting for the
Mm.
development of the play?
Never met anybody from Tennessee that wasn't lovely. Um, I am from the South. I'm from North
Mhm.
Carolina. I'm from a big, large, loud family and I'm a relatively quiet person in that family, but I think in the world people think of me as sort of gregarious and loud, but I think of myself as quiet. That's how loud my family is. Um, and it's a melody of language. It's a way of speaking that I adore. A lot of my work is set in the South. You know, I, it's that Zora Neale Hurston thing. It's that, these people whose stories live in the stories that they tell don't always get written down. Um, and so there's a real part of me that's trying to like capture some of that, particularly like contemporaries ideas of Southern people. Like I think the South is perpetually sitting in the past in people's imaginations. But like my whole family lives there now. Like it's it's a place with like um, you know, very complex and fascinating social and political stuff going on. And I think it's really rich terrain. Um, so yeah, I keep coming back to it over and over again. I think the next couple of things I'm working on are also set in the South, but very different, vantage points. So it's a thing I'm just always kind of curious about.
And I think that, when we think about, you just made a great point about theater as a whole, is that a lot of plays that are written about the South are from the past, right? Like
Mhm.
Tennessee Williams and so forth. Um, and a lot of, let's say, like students that are seeing plays for the first time need to see what the South is now, right? It's
Yeah.
not that there's anything wrong with what Tennessee Williams did, of course, like we wouldn't
No.
all be here without that. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, I think it's really important, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think that really is important for this person who's asking that sort of question. So
Yeah. It's on a continuum. Like I think about myself as a part of like a tradition.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm just sort of contributing to a wellspring of Southern writers um, that go back way before me.
Oh
So
yeah.
I think about it in that way.
Right. And you are now part of that canon, which is amazing. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, amazing. All right. Next is William Hamilton from Pennsylvania. William asks, what queer potentials did you see in the text of Hamlet before you began to process this adaptation?
I have always felt like the tension between Hamlet and Laertes was slightly sexual.
No, no, really?
I don't really know why. Like over the years of looking at that play, seeing productions of it, how hurt Laertes is because of the particular nature of who has caused all of this harm to his family. Um, when I started to work on this, I knew that I wanted Laertes and my Hamlet, Juicy, to have that tension, but it was like, how do I do that? So what I did is I sort of took the attributes that we usually associate with Laertes and gave them the opal. You know, the hot-headedness, the protectiveness, that stuff all ended up being a part of the Ophelia character. And the sort of uh, desire for softness, the sort of frailty, the sort of things happening to you versus you being a person of action. I gave all of that stuff to my Laertes character, and it sort of opened up some potential for those characters to actually like maybe say some things that I've always wanted to say that them to say to each other. So it's like weirdly like Shakespearean fan fiction. It's like these two characters that like, you know what, if those boys just kissed each other, this play
That's
would
right.
have been a comedy instead.
That's right. That's right. Like just from the beginning already, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and I think an important part of that question that I love that they ask is the idea of queer writing being so prevalent and being out there for everyone.
Yeah.
And of course, we see that in theater now, when of course it was there, but it was underneath, right? It was hidden.
Yeah.
It was part of it, and so that's why I think it's great that when you answer that question for that person about Horatio and Hamlet and how they were in the show, yeah, I went, no, really? Because it's there. The
Yeah.
undertones are there. And so it's amazing that you can bring that out now in a contemporary work and show that it's okay. Like all of that's all right. And you're allowed to talk about those types of things. So,
Yeah.
Allie Brown from Pennsylvania asks, what was the personal inspiration, if any, for Fat Ham?
You know, people ask me this question, is it about your family? It's not. It is these people are doing the things that people in Hamlet did, so not my
Mhm.
family. But the sound of the way people speak, I borrow from people's cadence. I borrow from turns of phrase. Um, that's where my sort of autobiographical, like in 100 years, if somebody reads this play and they read a biography about me, they'll be able to like match up where the the voices are coming from, I think, because those are the places where I borrow from my life. My my husband, there's I sort of moved into professional playwriting around the time I met my spouse. And so there's kind of a little joke in every play that only he will laugh at. I
Well, that's
know that
great.
it's a thing that only he will laugh at. Um, so that is I don't, you know, I'm not a very autobiographical writer. I just don't think my life is all that interesting. But I do think my life is full of fascinating people, and the way that they speak is the greatest inspiration in the world.
Well, you undercut yourself. Your life is very important and very interesting. So don't, I mean, yeah, I think we all think that. We don't think our lives are that interesting. Everybody else is interesting to us. So,
Yeah.
um, next question is from Megan Yaki McCrae. She's from New Hampshire. And she asks, what's a choice you made in Fat Ham that most audiences don't notice, but you're proud of? Besides the lines for your husband, besides those lines.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh gosh.
I know. That's a tough one.
It is a tough one. There's like tiny, tiny little Shakespeare things. So like when the play was on in the UK, every little nod to Shakespeare, they got it. And so one of those is when Tio comes back from he's got these new sneakers on. He's like, "You remember York?" And Juicy says, "Yes, I remember him." That is actually that is a direct quote from
Yeah.
from from Hamlet. It's never in the lines that people mention that I've like I'm always like, this is actually like one of the moments that is just straight up I've stolen Shakespeare's idea here of like this person from the past that's gone, and what does that mean about us living here to this like real confronting of like death, right before we have this like real confrontation with death. That moment when people, when that hits people and they like giggle or they go, huh, like that, I'm like, yeah, that always excites me. Because it's just like a weird little um moment. It's about a sneaker really, but if you know the play, you'll pick up on it. Um,
Right.
yeah, that's one of the moments that I'm always excited when people get that.
That's the theater nerd in you. That's it.
Oh
That's like,
yeah.
that person gets
Hmm.
it, and of course the Brits will get it, and that probably
Yeah.
brings you much joy when they're like, Shakespeare, right? We get it.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Our next question is from Gail Gilwant from Virginia. They ask, what made you choose Radiohead's Creep as the song Juicy sings in Fat Ham? It seemed both a perfect encapsulation of his character and a stark contrast with the rest of the characters.
Yeah. So this might be a little autobiographical. I have always been the person in my family that would listen to this like music that nobody else listened to in my family. And so I was a kid that was like in a family that was like listening to, R&B radio like that. And that is also like a deep, deep love. I mean, that's also shows up in the play too. But I loved like, Elliott Smith, like all of there was a an emo era that I had that that persists to this day. So like that song has always been very meaningful to me. Speaking of my husband, it's a song that he really loves. I had a student in class. I used to teach a characterization class when I was at Villanova. And early on, when I was teaching that class, one of the exercises was you had to do a lip sync a la Drag Race. Um, and you had to embody the song. You had to like embody the lyrics. It was really about embodiment. It was an embodiment exercise. And I had a student do Creep. And it was while I was working on the play, or I was raring up to work on the play, and I was trying to think of what Juicy would sing, and I was like, at one point, I was like, oh, maybe it's everything in its right place, which I also love. But those lyrics just didn't, you know. Yesterday, I woke up sucking a lemon. It just it
Yeah.
but Radiohead felt right, and so I landed on Creep, and then it was originally just that first little verse and chorus, and then when Sahim and I were working on it at the Public, he was like, "Listen to the second verse," and the lyrics of the second verse were just like, "Oh my God!" So we expanded it in the in-person production. Um, yeah, that's the story of Creep.
No. That's amazing that it can come from a student in a class that does something and then you see it and you're like, wait a minute, that's
Yeah,
perfect. Yeah.
that's why I teach. Like teaching is
Yeah.
it's such a reservoir, like because you're forced to continue to learn. Like you can't stop learning. You have to stay current. And so, yeah,
Yeah, that's how I feel about teaching too. It's like you see a kid do something or a student do something that's like so amazing, or they get it, or you see yourself in them, and you were
yeah,
that way. It's just continuously learning, continuously growing.
yeah.
Okay, now our next question is from Allison Delia Hall from New York. She asks, your work often involves a sense of magical realism. What draws you to magical realism? And what do you think it affords a story that realism alone may not?
Mm. I think it's because I am a relatively playful person, and so I'm always, you know, trying to dance with the audience a little bit. There's this Italian director I was introduced to through Dima Krimov, um, who talks about the theater of the caress, and I just love this idea that you you want to play with the audience, and so or that the act of doing this play is a kind of game. Um, and so what I take from that and why I think it kind of shows up in my work as magical realism is that it allows me room. The playground is larger. Um, and theater is one of the few places, it works beautifully in novels and in film, occasionally. But theater's a place where you really can make something feel magical. So why not? It's a place where you can go see a musical and people will spontaneously begin to sing. And it's a kind of magic, I think. And I write in realism, but even when I'm writing in realism, there's always this like thread of um, something larger, something more expansive at work. And I think I mean, I think I borrow that from August Wilson in a lot of ways. Like if you read that canon of plays, there's this thread of the spiritual that runs through it that's always there. It's not always the subject, but it's always really present. And so I think that's part of the reason why it always shows up. And it's just more enjoyable to write than people, just arguing about politics, which I can watch on TikTok. Um,
It's true.
yeah, I mean, like
It's
there
true.
there was a point where watching political debate on stage, I imagine was kind of thrilling, but I don't know, what that looks like now and how to make that thrilling anymore.
Yeah, that is difficult, but you're absolutely correct about that. That we don't need to see that. We need to see something that challenges us and
Yeah,
makes us think. Makes us think.
yeah.
Our next question is from Amy Zhang. She's from Pennsylvania. She asked, "What was the most difficult part of Fat Ham to write?"
The end. I didn't know how to end it. I There are many endings. There was an ending that ended with a talkback. There was a BDSM ending at one point. There were many endings, and a lot of it was because we know how Hamlet ends. And so everybody is walking into my play thinking, what are you going to do at the end?
Mhm.
And so it was just always this kind of pressure to make sure that the ending felt earned and that it felt uh, both surprising and inevitable. Um, yeah, that was hard, and went through a lot of different iterations of it. But I like where we ended up, where it is now. I like that it ends in a kind of sort of affirmation of all the things we've been sort of questioning. Is it okay to be tender? Is it okay to be feminine? Is it okay to be, soft? And then we ultimately say, yes, in fact, it's outrageous. Join us.
That's right. And I have to say that when I saw the production and I saw it on Broadway, I was one of those people that went in, of course, and was like, "What's he gonna do here? Right?
Yeah,
How is it gonna work out?" And I was blown away by the entire thing, and the ending I think is brilliant, brilliant.
thank you.
And so as a theater person and as someone who's worked professionally, right, we all go into things and we're like, what's this person going to do?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
at the end of the day, it's that feeling when something is so well done that you just have to say wow, and you learn from that. So thank you for that. Thank you
I
very much for
appreciate
that.
Thank you.
Next question. Cameron Orrick, he's from Texas, and he asks, in reimagining Hamlet through a modern Black, Southern, and queer lens, was there anything that surprised you, either about Shakespeare's story or about your own approach to storytelling?
Mm. I was surprised at how well the Shakespeare flowed into the Southern speech. And what it reminded me, and so the lesson I learned from working on this was, I grew up in the Black church, which is very brand loyal to the King James Bible. Very brand loyal. At least Baptist churches in North Carolina seem to be. And that is essentially Shakespearean verse. That is, Elizabethan Jacobean verse. And I was like, I've lived my entire life listening to Black, Southern, occasionally queer people speak in this form, in this literary, this archaic literary form with agency, with authority, with passion, with objective. And it made me recall like every teacher that sort of made me think my like Southern dialect or me being like the things of my nessness, as I say to students, is in some way, it's in some sort of contrast or friction with this text that is like I grew up reading in front of a congregation of people. Like why did I it just sort of like made me go, why did you allow that to like keep you from this or like make you feel like you didn't have access to it? Um so yeah, that was how beautifully the way those people spoke and how they, Juicy could talk and one in his voice and then very easily, smoothly move into the Shakespeare was very surprising. I was not sure that was going to work, and it did.
I think that it's fascinating to think about that now because seeing the production, reading the play, and thinking about how in the Baptist church it is very musical the way they
Mhm.
speak too, right? And passionate and objective driven and archaic to now look at it from the lens also of a Shakespeare play, which is very musical, archaic, and has clear objective and emotion,
Yeah.
brilliantly melds
I,
together.
it like stacked like Legos.
Yeah,
I just
yes.
couldn't get over how seamless it was. And yeah, that was, thought about my great grandmother who, would sit on the front row of church and read. Like I just thought about all of that. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Ready? Next
Yeah,
question.
I'm ready.
All right. Neil Phillips from Maine and also from Grayson Layard from New Hampshire. Fat Ham combines so many threads: Shakespeare, queerness, Southern identity, and humor. What process do you use to braid such distinct ideas into one cohesive narrative?
Oh gosh, it's a lot of trial and error. You plays are the effort of many people. You talk to dramaturgs, you talk to people, you talk to actors. Like all of that stuff gets much clearer the more you work on it, the more it gets sort of moved through. I would say that plays are gestures towards expanding community around a set of ideas. And so each time another set of people read it, you're getting this new set of impulses. So I try to be as responsive as possible, and I try to absorb things. I try to absorb where actors are struggling. I try to absorb where I am confused. Um, and then it's like, in terms of like bringing all the threads together, it's like, how do these, where are the places where these things are talking to each other? Where are the things where I can put southernness in a direct sort of conversation with Shakespeare, or I can put southernness in direct conversation with queerness. Like I think about that conversation that Juicy has with his mother, where she says, "You're not a whole punk, you're just a half a punk." And I use that language because that was the softest language people could use when they were talking to me when I was a kid about it.
Yeah.
And so that is like, I'm trying to paint this picture of the nuance of people sort of learning how to be okay with this thing that in the South has just always been in the closet. It wasn't that they weren't gay people, they just weren't as, you know, um, visible. And now we are much more visible, and that's
Mhm.
also true in the South. And so, um, yeah, that's a way. It's just always been, try to be responsive and absorb, um, so that you can see where you can make the things meet. or have them be in conversation with each other or conflict with each other. Like I think about at the end of the play, the refusal of the Heimlich maneuver. Like that's there's a lot of stuff happening there.
Yeah.
Some of it is that the character has to die, but some of it is like, you don't you are so afraid of the possibility of being gay that you would rather die than have someone reach around your body because that's the tension point. That's
Yeah.
the thing that we're afraid of. Um like
I
that's
mean,
an amazing way to bring these things together to say, okay, now what are we going to do? Yeah.
I mean, and just that moment, it's a small moment that people may not catch that
Hmm.
underneath you're trying to weave in. And I think that as a member of the LGBTQ plus community also, like
Hmm.
watching a show that does that, even though, I'm comfortable with who I am and all those types of things in life, I think about everybody else watching the show and
Hmm.
I think about what they gain from it. And especially
Hmm.
our students that are watching from all over the world, like it's such an important piece. And the way that you weave it together is done so masterfully. And that I think it makes a lot of sense for what you were trying to tell. And one thing that you said there too, I wanted to point out to everybody that maybe doesn't know a lot about theater and playwriting is that it is a collaborative art form. So,
Oh yeah.
like at the end of the day, when you're creating a new play, you're working not only by yourself on the play, but then it comes to putting the play up, and then you have a director, and then you have people with ideas, and the actors, and everybody involved. And that's the joy of working in theater is that
Yeah.
it changes and it grows, and everybody brings something to the table. So, I think it's
Yeah.
important to talk about that because we always focus on novels and on that type of writing, but playwriting itself is so important and such an integral part of kind of the the nest egg of who we are, and teaching and learning and is probably one of the few things left that is collaborative in a way.
Yeah.
um yeah, sorry, I went on a little bit of a tangent there, I
Oh.
apologize. All right, we're moving on to our next question, who is from Helen Crump from Mississippi. She asked, what is your intention with Fat Ham? What did you hope the audience and the readers take away from the experience?
Um, my hope is, hmm, I always, if I have to be honest, I bristle at this question every time I'm asked, what is it, what do I want an audience to take away? I'll explain why, and then I'll give the answer that I always give. Um, I don't think I can really know what an audience is gonna take away from a play. And I think anybody that sort of says, "Oh, I think they're gonna take away this," you have no idea. Like people
Right.
sleep through plays. Like, let's be honest. So what you can do is you can make sure you give people an experience. I have a lot of control over what that is. And what their perception or their feeling about that experience is, I don't really have a whole lot of control over. But what I can do is give them, for the 2 hours traffic of the stage, an experience. And so I want them to experience what it's like, um, to see people who seem to have a predestined path before them, a predestined set of choices and behaviors. I think it is useful to see people on stage choose something different. Um, I think it's useful to see families sort of look at each other and go, I know we missed that, so let's fix that." Um, yeah, it's more about like I think it's important for people to experience people healing, people transforming. So if there's anything that I want people to walk away with, it's that experience. But like anybody that's like, okay, this is the message I want people to leave with. You have no control over that. Because somebody could be looking at it. Like I think about when I went to see Paula Vogel's Indecent.
Mm,
Um,
mhm.
I'm I'm not Jewish. Um, and I felt so intensely that I was witnessing the experience of people realizing what was happening to them, and that as we sort of very slowly descend into authoritarianism here, that's a valuable experience for an audience. That's not about like theater isn't supposed to like you go to school if you want to leave with a lesson. Theater is supposed to give you an experience that is transformative. And so, yeah, I think thematically or lesson wise, people take away a lot of things from plays, you know. Um, but I think what the experience of that I'm trying to craft is what if you did it differently?
Hmm.
What might that look like?
Yeah, what's the if, right? What's the magic if, Stanislavski?
Yeah,
Right? It is. It's like that's what it is. That's what theater is all about. And I think you're absolutely correct. Anybody who says, this is what I wrote this play about, or this is what I directed this play about, this is what I want people to leave with, that's not the point. The point
yeah,
is what's the experience, what's the event that you want
yeah,
people to experience.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next question is from Chloe Fiddler. She's from West Virginia. She says, in my English class, we explore plays that riff on classics and ask, what is the verb? Whether the verb is critiquing, subverting, or celebrating. She says, what is the verb in Fat Ham?
I, uh, I hate to use the same answer again, but
Yeah, yeah.
to transform, to metamorphize, I'm gonna pick a big verb.
Yeah.
Like everybody wants to pick like fight. No, I want a big, onomatopoeic verb.
Mhm, mhm.
I think the verb is to um, maybe it's to surrender.
Yeah.
Like we don't think of that as inherently dramatic, but like could be.
Could be. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I think that is a perfect way to answer because again, it goes into the whole idea of an event and an experience and what are
yeah,
they gonna take from it. Our next question is from Carrie Rosalnio from Florida. This question might actually be the same as some others, but we'll see if we find something new in it. What about Fat Ham stays true to Hamlet? I think we might have
hmm
answered some of that. What strays? And then what's the overall message you want to get across through the play? I think we might have answered most of that.
yeah. But I think where it strays is interesting because it strays in many places.
Yeah.
It strays more than it stays on task. There's the obvious change of Polonius, not really being a father but being a mother. Um, the sort of energy of Polonius's two children. Um, what the play within the play is charades instead of a play within a play. And then the end, that
Yeah.
we don't have a bloodbath at the end, but we have,
Mhm.
really, a celebration of life. So yeah, it strays in many places. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's good that we answered that question because if I had skipped over it, we would have missed all of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's
Yeah, that's
wonderful.
great.
Our next question is from Nicole Nettleton from New Hampshire. She asks, "Are you rooted in family and tradition?" I think we definitely talked about that, but I think this is going to be interesting. How has that enriched your creative life, and how do you see today's trends of family disconnection affecting the future of the arts?
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a big question.
I'm deeply inspired by family. I think yeah, I think lots of times playwrights have like a couple of things that I say, what's the bee in your bonnet? Like what's the thing that makes you boil? Um and like family is one of those things for me. History, like I go back to history all the time in my work. But I'm constantly trying to understand the people that you just get.
Mhm.
it's, it's not the people you pick, it's the people you just get, and
Mhm.
how to hold all of their humanity, how to hold all of their messiness and beauty and cruelty and honesty and all of that. I just think it's like endlessly fascinating. Um, and so I write about families a lot. I think that, I have two things that are coming up in the next year or so, and one is just a real deep exploration of a historical moment, and the other one is like a real like my first real sort of like family drama. And yeah, I keep coming back to it. And I think the reason why is because my family is incredibly important to me. Um, I live far away from them. All my family's down south, and so a lot of times I'm drawing them close by having them in my ear in a lot of ways. Um, I get down as much as I can, and they're just good people. They're I'm lucky. I am really, really lucky that I was born into the family that I was born into. Because they're also really curious people. Um, yeah, I in some weird way want to be a steward of the depiction of the contemporary Black family, um, in all of our complexities.
Thank you for that wonderful answer. Our next question is from Morgan Marshall from Pennsylvania. They ask, what was it like being a person of color trying to break into the theater and playwriting world?
Um, Hard. I think there were things that I had to do that like my peers that were white didn't have to do, or things happened a lot easier for them. There was a lot more, at least when I was coming out. I graduated from grad school in 2006. So my God, that's okay. We don't have to go there.
it's
Um,
all it's all good. It's all
that
good.
just really, that's almost 20 years ago.
Mm, mm. I feel you. We're in the same boat.
Yeah. Um, I completely lost my train
I'm
of
sorry.
thought. What were read the
What
question?
was the? I will reread it for you. What was it like being a person of color trying to break into theater and playwriting?
Yes, thank you. Um,
It's all good.
you know, I don't take it for granted that it was much easier for me than it was the generations before me. Um, but it wasn't easy. And I'm stubborn, I'm a person that if I get told no, it sort of gives me the fuel to sort of go, oh, okay.
Mhm.
Next time it'll be undeniable. And I just sort of move through life in that way. Um, and and I know this is incredibly hard and it's not for everybody. I ignore racism. Um, I don't give a whole lot of um I am a person that will act as a bystander if I see someone else experiencing it. But when it happens to me, um, I don't give much fire to it because that's what they want. It's a distraction. Toni Morrison always says that racism is fundamentally a distraction. But that is not to say that my being Black and the sort of person that I am wasn't, uh, at the very least, a complexity for many people, and at the worst, a real problem. Um, and I would say now that that's better than it was, and it's still not great. That's my
Yeah.
the closest I can get to Pollyanna about what it was like, um, coming through. But as you can see, I did,
Mhm.
and you can too. Like a lot of it is if you don't quit, y- they have to let you in. I don't. I mean, that's probably me being a little light there, but I do think I just kept banging on that door. I was like, you're gonna let me in. Um, and
Keep banging
I'm
on the
kind of great.
ceiling.
Yeah, you got to keep you if you get caught up on why don't they want like then it's like the things you have within your control. Um, you can't control the wind, but you can adjust your sail.
That's right.
Um,
And I think that it all depends on where you are, timing, people, relationships, all of that,
yeah,
right? Especially in this business, it's all that, but it's also tenacity and grit and work and making
yeah,
sure that you keep telling them, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. I am who I am. I'm bringing this to the table, and I think that everybody's journey is different, but
yeah.
the feedback that you gave, I think, is really important for people really struggling with that idea of how am I going to do this coming from wherever I'm coming from and being who I am.
And the hard thing is a good thing. Like, I don't regret anything I did that was difficult. Um, I do regret not working hard on things and it not being great. Like that's where I regret. I don't regret, God, that was so difficult. I just go, wow, okay, I made it through that. I think I learned some things. I hope I learned some things. What's next?
That's right.
I treat good things the same way. When I won the Pulitzer the next day, I was like, okay, I gotta start writing something else because you can't get frozen in amber, you
Nope.
know.
Yeah. Okay. So our next question is from Kanan Muntz from Oklahoma. They ask, "What was your journey like in getting your plays produced?"
It was relatively it wasn't as difficult as I think it is for many writers, and it's because I worked as an actor for many years and had developed really, really, really good relationships with all of the
Mhm.
theaters in the city that I lived in as a performer. And then I just very slowly started to introduce this notion that I also wrote plays, and then they would read them and go, "Oh, they are kind of good." Um, and so it was really, I always talk to students about the horizontal versus the vertical. Everybody is like looking up. Who can bring me up to where they are? As opposed to who is also curious about the things that I'm curious about right here where we are. And I'm always grateful to Tom Weaver, who at the time was the artistic director of Flashpoint Theater Company. He was a good friend of mine. He is and continues to be one of, I think, the best lighting designers in the country. And he was running this theater, and he had worked with me as an actor. He had done designs on several shows that I'd been in, and he knew that I was writing plays, and he said, "Do you have anything?" And I gave him Miss Martha, and that's how I got my. It literally happened at a bar. Um, he asked me for this play, and yeah, it's smartphone era. I emailed it to him on from my phone, um, and it's just sort of kind of continued in that way. A lot of I think about um, meeting Saheem at a reading, and then like now we have this like long ongoing relationship as a director and a playwright. It's been a lot of um, uh, a lot of relationships that sort of like helped me along the way. But I think it wasn't as difficult for me to transition in because I'd spent a lot of time doing the difficult work of trying to transition in as an actor,
Mhm.
which I would say is probably, in many ways, I think it's a little easier to sort of establish yourself as an actor than it is as you cost less as an actor than you do as a playwright
Yes,
to
that's
produce a
true.
whole play versus casting you in a play. Um, so yeah, I mean that's my sort of particular journey to the moment.
Okay. Our next question is from Jonathan Bartlett from Arizona. He asks, "What drives your passion to continue to be a playwright?"
Mm, I like bringing people together. Um, I really think um, most of our problems would be solved if people went to the theater more often or went to any sort of live experience. Um, more often. That's, I mean, if you go to a sporting event, there's this camaraderie that happens. You fuse with strangers over
Yes.
colors. So we know that it's a powerful thing to put people who have affinity in a space together. And I think theater does that. I always say it's a rehearsal room for citizenship because you buy your little bit of real estate, you go in, you sit down in your little neighborhood, whatever your little section is, and you got neighbors. You might, you and your husband might be there, but you got neighbors on this side, neighbors in front
Yeah.
of you, neighbors. You have to be in intimate proximity to other people who you don't know.
Mhm.
Um, and I think the more that's an important human thing, if we're going to keep processing it forward. I think that that's like really important. So that's the thing. I mean, I write plays and now like, I do a little TV and a little finding my way to film. They're all
Mhm.
like attempting to gather people together. So like that's it. Like that's the reason is that it's an opportunity to bring a lot of people around an idea that I feel passionate about and I want to see what they think about it.
Right. And in a comfortable place where you can have that conversation.
Yeah.
And there isn't anything better than working on a play in that.
Yeah. And it's so fun. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
I even hard plays, like I directed King Headley last season at the Arden in Philly. And that play is hard. It's wordy. It's the characters are not very likable, but you know, that's the fun part is like, how do you then bring that to like propulsive life in front of people? And I'm hungry for that. Like, that's the thing that excites me about the theater is it's like getting a really big puzzle that has too many pieces. You get it because it's hard. That's fun.
Right. That's the whole point. You want to challenge yourself and
Yeah.
challenge the others, right?
And then
Yeah.
you get to the end and you're like, God, look what I did. Look what happened. And
Yeah. With working with all of those people,
yeah,
right?
I enjoy that feeling. And I try to stay in it as much as possible.
All right. We have time for a couple more questions.
Great.
And then unfortunately won't be able to answer any more, but let's answer a couple more. All right. From Marissa from Pennsylvania. She asks, what advice do you have for students who want to build lives that center on writing, theater, and literature, but may lack models and or support among their family and their community?
Um, there's so many. So the way you learn how to write when you're trying to start out is that you read. You're a reader first. And so all of the plays, because there are many that are online or are readily available, you should read them until there aren't any more. And then you need to go to the library. You need to read all the plays in that library until there aren't any more. And I think by then you should be ready to like, or actually, you don't even need to wait till you do all of that. You can read a play and then start messing around, see what happens. But like, I can't stress how important. I don't care what it is you're doing, whether you're acting, you're directing, you're writing plays, you're designing plays. You have to read the dramatic form and that's sort of the basis of everything. Um, find out where you can get into theater for free. See where you can, usher. Where like I did anything I could do to get to see a play. Um, I would lie. I would lie to try to see a play because
Yeah.
you know, it's a thing you have to experience and be in to like understand what it is. And so if you want a life in it, you gotta get sort of scrappy and figure out how to get around some people. make things with other people. Don't wait. This is the other thing I did. I didn't wait on people. Um, I when I first started writing plays would direct my own work when I was in college and in grad school. Um, I did things in the Fringe Festival. Like you don't have to wait on people to give you permission. And then, the big not waiting on people was Orbiter 3, where we were like, there's six of us. We're all very smart. We all have a lot of different skills. Let's do this. And we figured out how to produce a play from each of us over 4 years. That entrepreneurial impulse is especially if you're interested in being in playwriting, you absolutely must have this, I'll do it myself. I'll figure it out. You don't have to wait on people. Um, get in community. Just like go where the people who are doing the thing you want to do are. Go hang out. Where do they go after the play?
That's
Where
right.
did it, like you just need to be, it is such a relational industry. It is such a human interaction industry that it is both what you know and your talent, but it is so much how people perceive your ability to work with other people. Um, and so
Yeah,
the fun bits are fun. Go have a drink.
that's
Don't have
right.
sex, but go have a drink. Or if you don't drink, go have, a seltzer. But like get where the people where you are making the thing that you want to make.
Right. And you're absolutely correct. And I will reiterate what you said. It's all about connection. It's all about people and being with people and making those relationships,
Yeah.
whether positive or negative.
Yeah.
In the long run, you just got to keep doing that because that's how you're going to make yourself the person you're going to be in the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
Okay, from Lavondra Ham from Wisconsin. How do you deal with imposter syndrome, or how do you know your stories need telling?
Imposter syndrome is fascinating because I think everybody goes through it. I think I've been doing it long enough to know that everybody's kind of making it up. And when you realize that it frees you from, oh, do I belong here? If you're in the room, you're supposed to be in the room. Um, how do you know the story needs to be told? Because you want to tell it. It's itching at you. So if it's itching at you, it's going to be itching at many people actually. So if it's catching you, I always, my students think I've been saying like makes your blood boil. They're like, I'm not angry. I'm like, I don't mean like that. Just a thing that sort of gets your engine revving.
That's right.
Um, to bring in another metaphor here, um, that's what lets you know that it needs to be told. Um, if you're just sort of like writing because I think there are people who write with a kind of vanity, but I even think that they wouldn't, it's too hard to sit down and write a night of theater if you don't, you just have somebody, you always have something that's making you make people talk for that long. And so I just say, you know, it, um, you don't know if it's a good idea or not, but you write it because you must write it, and I encourage you to, any young person or anybody that's watching this, that's enough. That's enough of
It's
a
it.
reason.
It's enough. It's totally enough,
That
right?
is enough. It does not have to be like, the number of plays like Glass Menagerie is it can't get more sort of internal and almost navel gazing, but it's a gorgeous work that many people can relate to because he had that thing that he needed to
Mm,
get out.
mm,
And so Imposter syndrome goes away with a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Um, there's no such thing as writer's block. Just write the bad stuff because bad stuff comes back as good stuff later.
Yep.
Just don't throw anything away. Nothing is ever trash that you write. Um, yeah, that's my big advice about like the I don't know, like there's so many people who don't know what they're doing and are just trying stuff. Just
Mhm.
get out there. Just there's no cheat code. It's it's really a lot of trial and error.
Okay. Well, this is going to be our last question.
Okay,
We're out of time. And it just so happens to be a question from the director of the National English Honor Society, Mr. Christopher Lockwood.
love it.
And the question is, you've helped expand what queer stories can look like on stage. What do you hope the next generation of LGBTQIA plus playwrights and storytellers will carry forward?
Mm, I hope it gets more complex. We can still be a little mascotty in plays. Yeah, I mean, even in Fat Ham, there's a bit of that. I'll cop to. Um, that there's real complex, delicate stories. Um, that you can have gay characters that they're being gay isn't the story. That's also kind of fun. I also very much enjoy
Mm.
that. Um, and then here's a big thing. I'm teaching this structured class next semester. How can the shape of a play become queer, not just the content?
Wow.
Um, and
Okay.
that I think I'm really curious about what that might mean. Like I think one of the things that playwrights and the theater in general needs to be considering is form and how we're, confronting what the future of what a play might look like is. Because it's looked kind of the same for a while. I'm wondering, is there something else that we could be doing with the form? Yeah.
Okay. First of all, before we close this out, I want to thank you personally for having this conversation, for being such an amazing person, for being an inspiration for the theater community, for being an inspiration for the LGBTQ plus community, and for being just who you are and pushing the boundaries and doing things that you think are correct and should be out there for people talking about, for taking the time today to talk to us. And I personally, as another theater professional and an educator, greatly appreciate everything you're doing to help the students here in high school that I teach get to the college level, get to the professional level, and to challenge them to think, not only in their writing, but also in their performance if they're on stage. So thank you for everything you've done for the theater community. Thank you for everything you're doing to push the boundaries and push forward. And thank you for having this conversation tonight. It's been an honor and a privilege.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I've had just the most delightful time talking with you. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone else out there. Have a great evening.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Michael, for that thought-provoking and inspiring interview. And thank you all for joining us tonight and for sharing your questions. A recording of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel. That's at Sigma Tau Delta English. So be sure to subscribe and click the bell for some updates and more great content. If you'd like to read Fat Ham or explore more of James's work, visit the English Honor Society's bookshop page. Every purchase made there supports authors and independent bookstores. If your chapter plans to read Fat Ham together, be sure to download our new book club kit, which is available on both the NEHS and Sigma Tau Delta websites. Don't miss our next webinar with Samira Ahmed, author of the New York Times bestseller Internment, on January 14th, 2026 at 6 p.m. Central. Before then, though, here are some things to do this holiday season. Read Fat Ham, read as much as you can, listen to Radiohead, watch Drag Race, and go to the theatre. Have a wonderful evening, happy holidays, and good night.